We are about 24 hours away from several very high-profile primaries in California. The governor's race and the Los Angeles mayor's race are two of the biggest, along with several congressional contests, which will be conducted under newly redrawn district lines. Now, according to Political Data Incorporated, more than 3.5 million mail-in ballots have already been cast. Compared to 2022, the number of Democrats who voted early, down 2%. The number of Republicans voting early, up 2%. Melanie Mason joins me now. She is the California bureau chief for Politico and co-author of Politico's much-read, at least by me, California Playbook. Melanie, it's great to have you with us. Do some quick numbers. 23 million registered voters in California, 45% of them registered Democrats, 26.7% registered independents, 25% registered Republicans. What, if anything, do these early vote totals suggest to you?
Well, it suggests a couple of things. The first is the fact that we saw Democratic voters hold on to their ballots for so long. That the numbers that you just showed from political data really show that it seemed like Democrats didn't know where to touch down on this race, and particularly the governor's race. And so we saw them holding onto their ballots quite late. And I think that means that we're probably in for a long night tomorrow, because these late mail ballots coming in means it might be days really before we know what the outcome will be. But I think it just speaks to the very unsettled nature of this race. I mean, remember, just 6 weeks ago or so that we were all talking about former Congressman Eric Swalwell as the likely frontrunner of this race. Now we are looking at this race between Javier Becerra, who really kind of came out of nowhere, Tom Steyer, who has been spending well over $200 million on this campaign, and Steve Hilton, the Republican, who has the backing of President Trump, and then a whole lot of other candidates, including some like pretty significant Democrats, people like Katie Porter and Antonio Villaraigosa. So it's been a confusing race, and I think the fact that Democratic voters have been holding onto their ballots as long as they have just sort of shows that people didn't glom onto a candidate particularly early.
Two questions, and they are procedural. One, 61 names on the ballot for California governor. That's got to be injecting some manner of confusion into the process of finding the candidate you actually want to vote for. And second, convey to my audience as a quick reminder what the top two primary format in California means.
That's right. Well, I'll take that second one first. So California has this top two primary, which means that regardless of party, the top two vote getters will advance in these primaries until November. And that caused a lot of panic, particularly for Democrats early on, because they were seeing so many Democratic candidates. Democratic voters fractured among all of these candidates. And meanwhile, there are two Republicans who were consistently polling at the top of the polls. And Democrats thought in a state where they have such a registration advantage that there was a possibility that they would be boxed out of the top two entirely. That is almost certainly not going to happen now. We have seen the race sort of reshape itself over the last couple of weeks. In fact, it is possible we might see two Democrats advance instead. But that top two primary has given a lot of heartburn to Democrats. In fact, there's now a new effort to repeal that, to sort of roll that back, because I think Democratic operatives were so twisted up in knots over the possibility that they could have egg over their face and not have a candidate in this race. And yes, to your point about the ballot, it is a long one. And I actually am kind of going to be fascinated to see, because, you know, in polls, they're polling the top candidates, right? I mean, they're not going to be asking people about 61 candidates. But, you know, it is a little bit of an X factor when you have folks who are, for example, there's a man named Barack D. Obama Shah who is on the ballot. Does he get a lot of votes, or some votes at least, because he has a recognizable name? So it adds another kind of weird twist to this race. But I guess it wouldn't be California if there weren't some wonky things that are happening in the elections. And I think that the length of the ballot is an underappreciated one.
And quickly on the Los Angeles mayor's race, what are you watching for there? And do you think there'll be a known victor after Tuesday night?
I think that it is unlikely that we will have a sense of who the top two are that are advancing. It's possible that we might see who has sort of established enough of a lead to secure sort of that first place. But look, what we've watched in this race is kind of this amazing national spectacle around Spencer Pratt, who is this, reality TV star who lost his home in the Palisades fire last year and really has become this phenomenon online for his candidacy. There's a lot of very loud, very vocal Spencer Pratt supporters. We see them online all the time, and I hear it in California, in Los Angeles. But at the same time, it's also a lot of people outside of the state, right? If you see tweets about him, they'll say, if only I were in Los Angeles and could vote for you. So I think we're waiting to see how much of the Pratt phenomenon is sort of generated outside of the LA voter base. Or, as he claims, are there hidden Pratt voters, Democrats or independent voters who maybe wouldn't align with him politically, but are so frustrated with the state of the city that they might say, well, let's try a change. The one thing I will note is that it is very likely that he will jump out to a pretty early lead because of the way that the votes are counted, because Republicans either had turned in their ballots earlier than Democrats, or they tend to show up more on election day. And what we've seen consistently, not just in this race, but in others, is that the vote starts out kind of tilting more red, and then as these late ballots come in and are counted, it tends to shift more blue. So every election cycle, people rediscover that that's the pattern, and we'll have to remind people that that's not because of anything nefarious going on. It's just the nature of who votes when in these all-mail elections, and it tends to be that the Democratic voters are doing this late mail and therefore are counted later in the count.
Yes, mail spelled M-A-I-L. Melanie Mason, Politico. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.